Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. Thanks for joining me, spending a few minutes of your day with me. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. A federal judge condemned the prison treatment of President Donald Trump's alleged would-be assassin and actually apologized to him for a restricted confinement imposed by jail staff. Now, what is happening here when a judge is apologizing to an accused would-be assassin for the treatment he's receiving? And guess what? It gets even more bizarre. I have the full story for you in just a moment. 2/3 of Americans now say they're more afraid of running out of money than actually dying. That's not just a retirement story. That's a flashing red warning light about the cost of living, healthcare, inflation, and the future of the American dream. Governor Henry McMaster says he will not be calling a special session of the South Carolina legislature to redraw legislative districts following the U.S. Supreme Court ruling last week. And Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, joins us today to talk about the Supreme Court's decision to leave race out of redistricting and how South Carolina potentially will respond to this landmark case. It's a busy day. Let's jump in.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Federal judge yesterday condemned the prison treatment of President Trump's alleged would-be assassin. And he actually apologized to him for the confinement that has been imposed by the jail staff. Cole Allen, 31 years old, has been in federal custody since prosecutors say he attempted to gain access to the White House Correspondents Association dinner and kill President Trump along with other high-level government officials. Magistrate Judge Zia Farrakhi told an attorney representing the Department of Corrections that he was, quote, fascinated and disturbed by Allen's treatment in jail. Michael Miro of Fox News was outside of the courtroom.
Yes, Andrew, good afternoon to you. Judge Zia Farrakhi apologized to suspect Cole Allen for the treatment he's received so far while he's been behind bars. He's been put on suicide watch by the Department of Corrections, and the judge was asking why. An attorney for the government said that he was put on suicide watch because he told FBI agents the night of the White House Correspondents' Dinner attack that he didn't expect to survive, and his language suggested that he really was not expecting to survive his trip to Washington, D.C., and the ultimate incident where he allegedly showed up with a weapon to try and assassinate President Trump. He's been charged with that crime, but the judge very concerned about his constitutional rights, saying the defendant has requested a Bible, has requested meetings with his legal team, and that has not been allowed. He's been put in restrictive 24-hour lockup with no windows in a padded room without an opportunity to get out for recreation. And so the judge making it clear to the Department of Corrections that he wants answers by tomorrow morning about exactly what the housing determination will be made for the suspect in this case, out of grave concern about his constitutional rights, and that apology issued near the end of the hearing. And so quite a moment just moments ago in federal court. Bottom line, the Department of Corrections said they wanted to make sure that he survived, that this is a high-profile case, and all involved acknowledged it is a high-profile case. But again, the judge concerned about the treatment he's gotten since he was arrested after the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting incident.
Now, as you heard, Allen was placed on suicide watch when he was first in prison. Suicide watch protocols mandate that Cole remain on a 24-hour lockdown in a, quote, safe cell and have no phone access to call or receive visits from anyone other than his legal team. This according to the motion before the court. His lawyers also wanted him to be able to obtain a tablet to assist in his legal defense. He was also allegedly denied a copy of the Bible despite more than one request. Prosecutor Jocelyn Ballantyne reasoned that since Allen told investigators he did not expect to survive, that he was a danger to himself, that he wanted to be dead, that maybe this was an act of suicide by cop. But a incredulous judge wasn't convinced by that argument. And get this, the judge used comparisons between Allen and defendants arrested for rioting at the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. Here's what the judge said. To me, it's extremely disturbing that he was put in 5-point restraints, a person with no criminal history. It's troubling. I never heard of one of the January 6th defendants who was put in 5-point restraints or in a safe cell. If the only way to keep him safe is the most punitive thing, that's a problem. The judge said even January 6th defendants were only housed in a correctional treatment facility, a less restrictive form of prison housing. Now, what comparison is there that to someone who happened to be at the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th to a man who tried to assassinate the President of the United States? How can you compare the two? The judge went on to say, pardons may erase convictions, meaning the pardons that many J6ers got, but they don't erase history. They were hanging gallows outside. Wow. This is clearly an activist judge, isn't it? This is clearly a man who has his grievances towards the Trump White House, the Trump administration, and evidently doesn't really take it serious that this guy was trying to assassinate the president. Is that what you read into this? Do you get this same thing, this same feeling? Then he addressed Allen directly. He said, the jail is going to let me know by tomorrow morning about what's going on with your housing situation. If not, I'm going to have more questions for them. We should be able to get you into the medium portion of the jail with windows. So he's trying to get him a window view. He said, legal visits, ask for legal visits. Do not accept that these things are acceptable. We will get you the Bible. And look, I don't have a problem with that. He should have a Bible. If we can get someone vegan food, we can get you a Bible, the judge said. We can make sure you're not in 5-point restraints. Wow. Now, legal scholar Jonathan Turley says that he believes all of this will eventually be worked out in court.
Well, the Department of Justice is in between a rock and a hard place on an issue like this. If you do have a suicide, you have a sort of a lingering Epstein conspiracy theories that go on and on and on. Did he really commit suicide? You have someone here who said, I actually expected to die. And so the response from the DOJ is to make sure he didn't die in their custody. Now, that status appears to be lifting. It's not entirely clear. But the most important aspect of this is the denial of access to counsel. He does have a constitutional right for that. He also has the right to have access to a Bible. But the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons are both given a great deal of deference in the housing of inmates, particularly ones where they have concern for their safety, including potential suicide. It's not very common you hear a judge apologize, but this is the type of thing that gets worked out through the court, and I expect that's what's going to happen here. He's going to get access to his lawyers. He'll get access to a Bible. But the Department of Justice itself is going to retain a great deal of discretion on how he is housed.
Again, I'm blown away that this judge literally gave a tongue lashing to the Department of Corrections and prosecution And this was prompted, evidently, by a motion filed Sunday by Mr. Allen's attorneys requesting that he be removed from suicide precautions in prison. Now, what's going to happen if this guy turns up dead? Whose fault is that going to be? Now, evidently, Allen's attorneys asked to withdraw the motion Sunday afternoon after they said they learned that Cole was no longer under the jail suicide precautions. So I guess maybe they have eased up a bit. But despite that withdrawal, the judge ordered the prosecution, defense, and legal counsel for the DOC to appear before him yesterday morning for an emergency hearing. In other words, this judge wanted to be heard. He had a political statement that he wanted to be made. He wanted to be in the headlines, and guess what? He did. He made the headlines because a lot of people right now are scratching their head trying to figure out how you can compare a person who wants to assassinate the president, allegedly, to someone who was protesting on January the 6th, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. Tell me how those two compare. Text me. Email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. There's a moment no one wants to talk about with weight loss. It's the moment it stops working. Joey Hudson here. The diet that worked before doesn't. The workouts don't hit the same. Even eating less stops moving the scale. That's not random. That's your body protecting itself. Because when your body thinks it's under stress, it slows your metabolism, holds on to fat, and fights you every step of the way. That's why quick fixes eventually fail. Even the popular GLP-1 shots, they suppress appetite, but they don't fix what caused the problem. At PhD Weight Loss, they focus on restoring your metabolism so your body stops fighting you. That's when the real change happens. And right now, when you call or mention Joey, you're going to get 2 weeks free, and they'll pay for the cost of your food. Just call 864-644-1900. Do it right now and get ready for the summer. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com, because the goal isn't to lose weight once. It's to never have to start over again. Call today and tell them Joey sent you. Since the U.S. Supreme Court's decision last Wednesday on the idea of not having to use race as part of the equation on redistricting, a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about that. MS Now host and activist Al Sharpton condemned Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for doing an impersonation of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Here's the exchange.
Now, Republicans are trying to claim that black majority districts across the country are racially discriminatory. Yet Florida's governor this week has been out mocking House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries using an offensive accent. What do you make of the GOP's racist rhetoric right now, at the same time they're dismantling civil rights protections that have been an important part of our democracy for decades now?
But remember that this has been DeSantis' MO. You know, just a couple of years ago, he got rid of Black history in our school system. Back in 2022, he actually vetoed the maps from the legislature during the actual redistricting period of time so that he can draw his own maps to dismantle one of our Black electeds' congressional seats in the Panhandle. So this is what Ron DeSantis has consistently been doing. You know, the Stop Woke Act, the DEI attack. And so I'm not surprised that DeSantis continues to stoop lower and lower and lower when it comes to his rhetoric and protecting all 23 million Floridians that are here in our state.
Now, that was the exchange between Mr. Sharpton and Nikki Fry, the Florida Democrat chair. This, of course, is amid an ongoing redistricting battle. There's been another feud about political rhetoric and tone just days before an apparent assassination of President Trump just a week or so ago. Mr. Jeffries warned DeSantis against redrawing the state's congressional map, declaring, "We are in an era of maximum warfare everywhere all the time." So it's okay for Mr. Jeffries to talk about warfare, to talk about violence. He's also challenged Republicans with similar rhetoric, declaring, this is a quote, "Our message to Florida Republicans is F around and find out." During a news conference amid the redistricting battle, Governor DeSantis imitated Mr. Jeffries, his bombastic rhetoric and his voice saying, we're going to do maximum warfare against Republicans, Florida Republicans, you F around, you're going to find out. I mean, DeSantis is just imitating what Mr. Jeffries sounds like. It's just that simple. He then paraphrased Jeffries again without limiting his accent. And he's like, oh, if you do the redistricting, we're going to take out all your members. We're going to do all this stuff. And what I said was, go ahead, make my day. Again, he's just making light of an arrogant Hakeem Jeffries. The governor basically invited Mr. Jeffries to visit Florida.
The other thing I'll say is, I heard this guy Jeffries popping off in Washington about Florida. He wants to be Speaker of the House, and he's kind of like, more liberal than Pelosi and all this other stuff from New York City. I just want to know, Florida can't do, we're going to go after Florida. Please be my guest. I will pay for you to come down to Florida and campaign. I'll put you up in the Florida governor's mansion. We'll take you fishing. We'll do all this stuff. There's nothing that could be better for Republicans in Florida than to see Hakeem Jeffries, everywhere around this state. Voters will not like what they see. They will not want that type of ideology. And so the door is open. The invitation's out there. I don't think there'd be anything better for the Republican Party of Florida but to have Jeffries there. Now, I kind of feel bad for the guy because he's as left as they come. He's always going left. And yet the far left hates him. They call him a dollar store Obama. They call him AIPAC Shakur, all these different derogatory names that they do. And so he's tried to ingratiate himself with but they're just not drinking the Kool-Aid, and so they give him a hard time. So I kind of feel bad for that. But please be my guest to come down in Florida. We would love to have you. Any questions back there?
Don't you just love Ron DeSantis? Of course, all of this was instigated by last Wednesday's Supreme Court ruling. In a 6-3 ruling, they decided to limit how race can be used in districting and narrowed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, something which Al Sharpton condemned very heavily and bombastically on his show on Sunday. He said Republicans are trying to claim that black majority districts across the country are racially discriminatory. Well, what are they? If you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort targeting a certain district in order to make it basically unwinnable by a white Republican, what are you doing? Are you not discriminating? Why not do what the Supreme Court has just ruled that we do? Just evenly divide the population so that you have the same number and forget about trying to gerrymander, because the Democrats are all against gerrymandering unless it's gerrymandering a district that would basically allow someone like Jim Clyburn of South Carolina to be reelected year after year after year. Jim Clyburn would not stand a chance if the South Carolina legislature was not forced to draw that district just for him, to have a black majority, have a black Democrat majority, even if you have to make it look. Have you ever looked at his district, District 6? Let me encourage you to take a look. All you have to do is just Google South Carolina Congressional District 6, and all kind of maps will come up. They had to work very hard to come up with that district just for Jim Clyburn because he is a black man. That is the token district, black district for South Carolina. And again, the only reason it's there is because of the Voting Rights Act. House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries, and what started this feud, if you will, between Governor DeSantis and Jeffries, he said, he went on to ask, what do you make of the GOP's racist rhetoric right now at the same time they're dismantling civil rights protections that have been an important part of our democracy for decades now? So it's racist for the U.S. Supreme Court to say we shouldn't be using race at all. And it's racist if states like Florida and other states who say they're going to redraw their district and do them right now that they don't have to consider race, that's racist. Ms. Fried replied, but remember, this has been DeSantis. You know, just a couple of years ago, he got rid of black history in our school system. Wow. I mean, these guys are just looking to make race part of the discussion. I don't care what you're talking about. Somebody like Al Sharpton, somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, and like this Nikki Fried, she's a white woman, but the Democrat Party in general always want to introduce race in the argument. It's always something about race. What is racial and what is racist is to force South Carolina to have a district that is guaranteed to have a black man elected. That's what is racist. Again, divide the state up, make it make sense for the population, and then let everybody compete. Let the Democrats run who they want to. Let James Clyburn run. If he can win on his merits, great. If he doesn't, then that's the will of the people. It's just that simple. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, too, since last week's decision on whether or not South Carolina will, in fact, try to redraw our lines effective for this year, for these midterms. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Governor Henry McMaster says he is not preparing to call a special state house session to redraw South Carolina's congressional districts. This was confirmed yesterday. And this decision, of course, came as President Trump and other Republicans have pushed southern states to create more GOP-leaning House seats ahead of the midterms. Absent a special session, which Governor McMaster is the only one who can call that, it's very unlikely state lawmakers will take up redistricting this year with just just over a week left in the session. They just don't have time. And quite honestly, in all fairness and defense of Henry McMaster, there's probably just not time for South Carolina to do this anyway. I mean, our primary is June 9th. I would imagine the only option would be we just don't have the primary June 9th. We push everything later into the summer if the legislature could come back in June and try to hash this out. There'd probably be lawsuits, everything else. I don't know that it makes sense, but I can guarantee you, and all these candidates running for governor, they've all committed that redistricting will be a priority first thing next legislative session, and we'll hold them to it. What do Americans fear worse than death? The answer may surprise you, and that's what we're going to dive into today. Now, here's the story. 2/3 of Americans now say they're more afraid of running out of money than they are of dying. That's not just a retirement story. That's a flashing red warning light about the cost of living, healthcare, inflation, and the future of the American dream. A new retirement study's out, and the headline is hard to ignore. According to Allianz Life's 2026 annual retirement study, 67% of Americans say they worry more about running out of money than they worry about their death. That is a record high according to Allianz, and it tells us something important about the anxiety sitting around kitchen tables all across the country. And it's kind of sad, isn't it? Now, here's where it gets even more revealing. Gen X is the most worried group. Allianz reports 73% of Gen Xers say they fear going broke more than dying. Millennials are closely behind at 69%, and then the baby boomers, where I fall in, comes in at 59%. Now think about that for just a moment. These are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are people who are working, they're saving, they're raising their families, they're paying their taxes, they're trying to do the right thing, and now many of them are looking at retirement and they're wondering, can I actually afford to live? And that fear is not coming out of nowhere. The same study points to inflation, healthcare costs, market volatility, and a lack of written financial planning as major factors. Allianz says 48% do not have a written financial plan. 57% feel anxious about their future financial well-being when retirement accounts drop with the market. And let's be honest, after the last few years, who can blame them? Families have watched grocery bills rise, housing costs climb, insurance costs increase, and health care become one of the biggest financial burdens in American life. KFF reported that in 2025, the average annual premium for employer-sponsored family health coverage reached nearly $27,000, with workers paying about $68.50 towards premium out of their own paychecks. That's before deductibles, before copays, before prescriptions, before the surprise bill that shows up after you thought insurance had already handled it. And consumer confidence is taking a beating as well. The University of Michigan's April 2026 Consumer Sentiment Index dropped to 49.8%, described by multiple reports as the lowest level on record. We're just frightened about the future. So when Americans say they're more afraid of going broke than dying, maybe what they're really saying is this: they're afraid of outliving their savings that they've worked so hard for. Have you thought about it? Do you fall into this category? People are afraid of becoming a burden to their children. They're afraid that after decades of work, the system they counted on may not be there when they need it most. And this cuts right across politics. It cuts across age. It cuts across income, because whether you're a conservative, a liberal, a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, everybody understands the feeling of opening a bill and thinking, how much higher can this go? Before we go any further, let me ask you this. Are Americans right to be worried? Has fear taken over the retirement conversation? Love to get your comments. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Now, here's the bigger issue. For years, Washington has talked about retirement in terms of programs and budgets. They talk about Social Security, talk about Medicare, the stock market, interest rates. But for regular Americans, retirement's not a policy on a piece of paper. It's whether they can keep the house, whether they can pay for medicine, whether they can help their kids and grandkids, whether they can live with dignity. And that word dignity matters, because people, they're not asking to be rich. Most Americans are asking for something pretty basic. Work hard, save what you can, have enough stability to retire without fear. But when inflation eats away at savings, healthcare costs keep rising, and the market feels unstable, that promise starts to feel less certain. Know what I mean? Now, there is a practical side to all this. Allianz says nearly half of those surveyed do not have a written financial plan. And that matters because fear gets worse when people do not know where they stand and where they're headed. But this is also bigger than personal planning. This is about whether America is still affordable for the people who actually built America. And that should concern every elected official in Washington and across the states. Because when 2/3 of Americans say running out of money scares them more than actually dying, that's not just a retirement headline. That's a national warning. The question now is simple. What do we do about it? Do we keep pretending families are fine? Or do we start having an honest conversation about inflation, healthcare costs, retirement security, and the future of the middle class? I'd love to hear from you. Are you worried about your retirement? Do you think the American dream is getting harder to afford? Be sure and send me a quick text. Email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. That's it for today's show. Tara's up next, followed by Mike Gallagher, Bill Frady, Charlie James. I'm back again tomorrow at 5 a.m. in your first cup of coffee on Sunrise, Carolina. Till then, folks, remember, God's got this. He's still in control. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. On our guest line today, Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. Welcome. How are you?
Doing well this Monday morning. How are you?
I am wonderful. We got a number of things to cover here. We had a busy week this past week since we last talked. The U.S. Supreme Court opened the door for states to redraw legislative districts without using race as a factor. How does that affect South Carolina, and do you see our legislature redrawing our districts anytime soon?
Well, it's a good question in terms of, first off, effect here on South Carolina. As you know, the 6th congressional district is what's termed the majority-minority district. And, you know, it was drawn in such a way where basically you put as many Democrats as possible into one congressional district to make it more likely that you Republicans win the other districts that are adjacent to it, which in that sense has worked fine. The real question is whether or not you could further draw the lines in order to make that district more competitive or even a Republican district, which gets down to the math. You know, first off, we'll just say that, you know, in terms of the Supreme Court's opinion, we completely and totally agree with the Supreme Court. I mean, we should not draw lines for racial purposes. The Supreme Court has specifically said that you can draw lines for political purposes. Now, you know, as we know here in the South, largely, you know, African Americans tend to vote about 85 to 90% Democrat. You know, now that's coming down. That's changed from what it used to be. It used to be virtually almost 100%.
Yeah,
we've seen that percentage gradually come down, especially here in South Carolina, and I would especially point to places like the PD in recent years. But all that said, you know, does that mean that we could potentially redraw these lines? Yes. Does it mean that we could potentially get the results you would want out of drawing those lines? And the answer to that is right now, I don't know, because it comes down to the arithmetic. You know, I mean, drawing lines are about math. Do you have enough of the voters that you would like to be in a particular district to make it more winnable? I think you could certainly make it more winnable for Republicans. The question is, though, at the end of the day, would it affect the districts next to it and make them less winnable for Republicans? That's the answer that we don't really know until you get down into the math and the map making, and you have to be careful in what numbers that you use. You know, in other words, this election this year is going to be an off-cycle election. It's a midterm election. It's not a presidential election here. You know, and Trump is not going to be on the ballot as he was in 2024. So you can't look at Republican numbers in 2024 and then extrapolate that out into a midterm election and say, well, this is what we would get. That's not going to be the case. It'll be different than that. It'll be a little less than that.
Yeah.
The question is how much less? And that's really the open question that we're looking at around the country right now for a midterm election. You know, how much is Republican voter turnout going to drop versus in 24 when Donald Trump was on the ballot? And that's a really good question, and we'll be answering that question or trying to answer that question all the way up until Election Day.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, we, you know, there's some states, the day that the court issued its opinion, some states were already rallying their governor to call a special session and to get back in and make some changes. But that's certainly something we will be watching. Also, last week, the South Carolina Election Commission approved the idea of sending voter information to the U.S. Department of Justice. This program has caused a lot of discussion. Can you explain to us what it is we're going to be sending DOJ and why?
Well, essentially, you're sending them the list, and you're sending them the list with associated, you know, say the digits, the last digits of Social Security numbers, and, you know, other information which had people thinking, well, you know, this information is too private to be shared with other folks as you think about, you know, information security concerns, identity theft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, look, I mean, let's let's not be, try to be too cute about this. The federal government issues Social Security numbers. They've already got our Social Security numbers. So the fact that they're associated with our voter registration file is a feature of South Carolina, registration law. In order to register, you have to provide that information. So it ends up being on the file, and then people were freaking out that we were going to give it to, let's just call it what it is, the Trump administration. The bad orange man was going to get your Social Security number and your voter registration data. That's the way the Democrats build it all around the country. And so you have some states reject sending that information, particularly blue states. Here in South Carolina, it was a little bit different because you've specifically got a state law here that they have to essentially work around that says that, that information can't be shared in most instances. And the reason for that is, again, because of information security. But again, I go back to the fact that the federal government already has that information. So glad to see the Election Commission, get an agreement together with DOJ. So they've, patched up their differences now so they can share that. And at the end of the day, the whole reason for this is to make sure that the people who are registered to vote in our state and in every state, and those who are actually voting, are United States citizens. That's the most important thing here. Who's registered and who's voting in elections. Yeah. If you don't control the list of who can participate, then you can't control the process. Yeah. And that's the key thing.
Yeah. Drew McKissick is our guest today, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. So our next, of course, June 9th is the primary. Our next gubernatorial debate is coming up later this month. Talk with us about that and who can participate.
Well, so at this point, until we get a partisan voter registration law in South Carolina, every registered voter can participate. And we've got a lawsuit pending about that issue. But that aside, for this primary, if you're registered to vote at least 30 days before the primary, you can participate in the primary. Look, this is the first open primary, particularly for governor, that we've had, since 2010. We've got 6 candidates out there running hard. I think turnout is going to be the highest we've ever had. When you add on to that, especially, we've got an attorney general's race, you got an agriculture race, et cetera, not to mention local races. Turnout's going to be big. I'm looking for probably 550,000 total statewide. That blows previous records out of the water. And I think at the end of the day, that underlines the fact that we've got more folks who want to associate with the Republican Party in this state than you do with Democrats.
Yep. Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. Always a pleasure. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com.